There is something people don't tell you about marriage, especially church marriage. Before the wedding, everybody is praying. After the wedding, everybody is advising. But when things start going wrong behind closed doors, most people don't know what to say anymore. Because some problems don't look like problems until you live inside them. This was one of those marriages. Nobody in Covenant Fire Assembly ever called Gideon by his full name. It was always Brother Giddy, sometimes Brother Smiles. He was everything the church admired in a man. Always early to service, always neatly dressed, always smiling. Not the fake, tight smile people forced during greetings, but the kind that reached his eyes, the kind that made people relax around him, the kind that made women imagine safety. When Gideon stood behind the microphone during praise and worship, the atmosphere changed. He didn't shout, he didn't jump. He simply sang, slowly, deeply, eyes closed, face lifted like someone who genuinely believed heaven was listening. Women cried during his ministrations, men nodded, moved. The pastor often said, "Some people sing with their mouth. Gideon sings with his spirit." Mabel noticed him the first Sunday he led worship after she joined the church. She didn't fall immediately, she wasn't that type, but something about him stayed with her. It was the way he smiled even after service, still greeting people, still patient with children tugging at his sleeves, still answering questions. It was the way he helped pack chairs without being asked, the way he laughed easily. When he finally walked up to her weeks later and said, "Sister Mabel, I've noticed you don't talk much," she laughed nervously. "I'm just observing," she replied. He smiled wider. "That's good. Observers see things others miss." From that day, they started talking. At first, it was small things. Church programs, sermons, music, live before Covenant Fire. Gideon never crossed boundaries, never rushed her, never said anything inappropriate. Other sisters noticed, they always did. "Lucky girl," one whispered when Gideon walked Mabel to her bus stop. Mabel tried not to let it enter her head, but it did. When Gideon finally asked her to pray about marriage, not dating, marriage, her heart nearly jumped out of her chest. A man like this chose her. Their relationship unfolded publicly and beautifully. No secrecy, no hiding. Everyone knew. They sat together, served together, took pictures together after service. Gideon never stopped smiling. He prayed before meals, prayed before sleeping, quoted scriptures effortlessly, corrected gently, never raised his voice. When he proposed, he did it simply. After midweek service, no cameras, no crowd, just him, her, and a quiet corner of the church. "I want a home that reflects Christ," he said. Mabel cried. She believed she had won the jackpot, not because he was handsome or popular, but because she thought she had married a man of God. The wedding was church approved, church celebrated, church prayed over. Pastors laid hands, elders smiled, women envied. "Marriage will be sweet for you," they told her. "You chose well, you married peace." Mabel believed every word. The first 3 months felt exactly like the prophecy. Then, something shifted, quietly. The first crack didn't come with noise, it came with food. Mabel remembered the day clearly because she had been proud of the meal. Not proud in a dramatic way, just that quiet satisfaction a wife feels when she gets something right. Gideon had once mentioned casually that he loved egusi with a lot of ugu, cooked thick, the way his mother used to make it. So, she took her time. She washed the vegetables, ground the melon seed herself, tasted the soup 3 times. When she placed the plate in front of him, she waited for the smile. The same smile that had drawn her in. The smile that lived permanently on his face in church. Gideon looked at the plate. Then, he looked away. "I'm not hungry," he said. That was all. No explanation, no apology, no "thank you for the effort." Mabel laughed awkwardly. Maybe later. Later never came. She wrapped the food, put it in the fridge, and told herself it meant nothing. People weren't machines. People had moods. But the next day, it happened again. Different meal, same silence. By the third time, her chest began to feel tight. Is my cooking bad? She asked one evening, trying to keep her voice light. Gideon didn't answer immediately. He washed his hands slowly, dried them carefully, then said, "You asked too many questions." That was when she first felt it. That small, sharp confusion. Not anger, confusion. Because this wasn't the man she dated. This wasn't the man who used to ask about her day, who prayed with her on the phone, who noticed when she was quiet. This man lived with her, but he wasn't with her. Soon, the silence grew teeth. If she said something he didn't like, Gideon shut down completely. Not for minutes, for days. He wouldn't respond when she greeted him in the morning, wouldn't answer texts, wouldn't pray with her, wouldn't acknowledge her presence in the same room. At first, Mabel chased peace. She apologized even when she didn't know what she had done wrong. "I'm sorry I offended you. I didn't mean it that way. Please talk to me." Gideon never shouted, never insulted her. He simply ignored her. And that hurt more than anger ever could. At night, they lay on the same bed like polite strangers, space between them, silence thick enough to suffocate. Weeks passed, then months. He stopped touching her. No hugs from behind, no casual hand-holding, no intimacy. At first, she thought maybe he was fasting, maybe stressed, maybe praying. She waited. When she finally gathered the courage to ask, she chose her words carefully. "Gideon, have I done something wrong?" He stared at her for a long moment, like he was surprised she could still be asking questions. "Why do you always want to force closeness?" He said. "Force closeness." The words landed like a slap. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Because crying never helped. Crying only made him colder. From that day, Mabel learned to tiptoe in her own home. She watched her words, measured her tone, second-guessed her emotions. If she was too cheerful, he looked irritated. If she was quiet, he accused her of sulking. There was no safe place. Yet, every Sunday, Gideon transformed. The smile returned. The gentle voice returned. He stood on the altar, eyes closed, hands lifted, singing about love, surrender, and grace. Women cried. Men nodded. The pastor once said, "Brother Gideon carries peace." Mabel sat beside him, nodding slowly, wondering where that peace slept at night because it wasn't in their house. After service, sisters pulled her aside. "You are blessed. Your husband is so calm. I pray my future husband is like him." Mabel smiled because she didn't know how to explain that calmness can be cruelty when it's empty. At home, Gideon corrected her constantly. "You talk too much. A wise woman knows when to be quiet. Submission isn't noise." Always calmly, always scripturally. He quoted the Bible the way a lawyer quotes the law, selectively, confidently, without mercy. When she tried to express how lonely she felt, he said, "Marriage isn't about feelings." When she begged for affection, he said, "You are too emotional." When she cried, he stared at her like he was watching a stranger. Months passed without intimacy. Her body felt rejected. Her confidence disappeared. Her prayers became shorter. She started wondering if she was imagining things. Other women have been beaten. Others have been cheated on. At least he's faithful. At least he doesn't shout. But loneliness can be violent too. She finally went for pastoral counseling. She dressed modestly, chose her words carefully, avoided sounding accusatory. The pastor listened, nodding thoughtfully. "You need to pray more," he said. "Marriage is spiritual. God hates divorce. Patience is a virtue." Another leader added, "A man like Gideon? That's rare. Don't let emotions ruin a good thing." Nobody asked if she was sleeping alone in marriage. Nobody asked if silence can destroy a person. Nobody asked why a Christian home felt colder than the world. Mabel returned from the pastoral counseling with mixed emotions. She wasn't angry. She wasn't encouraged either. Just heavier. The pastor's words replayed in her mind as she locked the door to the house. Be patient. Pray more. God will soften his heart. She dropped her bag on the chair and stood there for a moment, listening to the silence of the house. Gideon wasn't home yet. Part of her was relieved. Another part of her felt foolish for feeling relieved. So, Mabel prayed. She fasted. She begged God to fix her husband or numb her heart enough to survive him. But every night, she lay beside a man who worshipped God loudly and loved her quietly, if at all. And slowly, painfully, she began to understand something terrifying. She wasn't being beaten. She wasn't being cheated on. But she was being erased. One evening, she decided to try again, not as a wife asking for love, but as a believer applying counsel. She cooked dinner carefully, even humming a worship song as she stirred the pot, as if peace could be summoned through obedience. When Gideon arrived, she greeted him warmly. Welcome. He nodded and walked past her. She set the table. He sat, glanced at the food, and stood up again. I'm not eating, he said. Something in Mabel resisted the urge to apologize automatically. Instead, she asked quietly, Is there a reason? Gideon paused, then slowly turned to her. You see, he said calmly, this is what I mean. Always questioning, always pushing. I'm not pushing, she replied, keeping her voice steady. I'm trying to understand. He scoffed lightly. Understanding isn't your role. Submission is. That was new. He had never said it so plainly before. Mabel felt her chest tightened, but she remembered the counseling. Peace, patience, soft answers. I'm trying to be submissive, she said, but I can't do that if I don't know what I am offending you with. Gideon stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to make her feel small. You women complicate simple things, he said. This is why I prefer silence. That night, he moved to the guest room, not because of a fight, but as a punishment. The days that followed felt different. He became stricter, colder. He stopped pretending. If she spoke too much, he reminded her of submission. If she prayed aloud, he told her she was being dramatic. Once, when she suggested they pray together like they used to, he said, spiritual things shouldn't be forced. Yet on Sundays, he led worship with tears in his eyes. Then, one Sunday, something happened that shook Mabel deeply. After service, a young couple approached Gideon. Brother Gideon, the man said respectfully, we've been married 6 months now, and we are struggling. The way you carry peace, please, can you counsel us? Gideon smiled. Of course, he said, marriage is about dying to self. Mabel stood beside him, smiling faintly, while something inside her screamed. That night at home, she couldn't hold it in anymore. You counsel people about marriage, she said quietly, but you won't talk to your own wife. Gideon's face hardened instantly. You are crossing the line, he said. I'm your wife, she replied. What line is higher than that? He stood up slowly. I don't like disrespect, he said, and I won't tolerate it in my house. Our house? Not our house. My house. That was the first time fear entered Mabel's heart. Not fear of violence, but fear of authority unchecked by love. From that day, Gideon began keeping records. Not written ones, spiritual ones. Whenever she disagreed, he accused her of rebellion. Whenever she cried, he accused her of manipulation. Whenever she withdrew, he accused her of bitterness. He began reporting her indirectly to church leaders. She's struggling spiritually. She questions authority a lot. She needs more prayer. Suddenly, Mabel noticed how people spoke to her differently. Less warmth, more correction. She became the problem that needed fixing. One evening, after a particular long silent treatment, she broke. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply said, "Gideon, this marriage is killing me." He looked at her calmly. "No," he said, "your lack of submission is killing the marriage." That was the moment Mabel understood something with chilling clarity. Gideon didn't want a wife. He wanted compliance. Love was optional. Obedience was mandatory. That night, she packed a small bag, not to live forever, just to breathe. When Gideon saw the bag, he didn't ask where she was going. He only said, "If you step out of this house, don't come back and blame me." That sentence sat heavy in the air. Mabel stood there, bag in hand, torn between doctrine and survival, between vows and sanity, between what the church had taught her and what her body and soul were screaming. She realized then that the most dangerous marriages are not the loud ones. They are the quiet ones where pain is spiritualized and silence is called peace. And for the first time since she got married, Mabel made a decision. She left. Gideon did not call. Not the first night Mabel left, not the second, not even to ask where she was. Days passed, and when the pastor casually asked him after service why his wife had been absent, Gideon sighed softly, the way a patient man sighs when he's tired of explaining himself. "She packed and left," he said. "I tried. God knows I tried." There was sadness in his voice, or something that sounded like it. "Marriage these days," he added, shaking his head slightly. "People don't endure anymore." The pastor frowned. "That's not good." Mabel received the call 2 days later. "Come to my office," the pastor said. "We need to talk." She went with a small, foolish hope in her heart. Maybe this time, someone would hear her. They sat across from each other in the office. Gideon calm, composed, legs crossed. Mabel stiff, tired, holding herself together. The pastor asked her to speak first. She did. She spoke carefully at first, then honestly. She talked about the silence, the neglect, the malice, the month without intimacy, the way she felt like she was dying slowly while still breathing. "I'm not rebellious," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm exhausted. Marriage shouldn't feel like a punishment." Gideon listened without interruption. When it was his turn, he leaned forward slightly. "She exaggerates," he said calmly. "I'm not perfect, but I'm a peaceful man. She's emotional. She questions authority. She wants feelings over principles." The pastor listened to both sides. Then he sighed. "My daughter," he said to Mabel, "this is not how a virtuous woman behaves." Her heart sank. "There is no separation in the Bible," he continued. "Endurance is part of marriage. You don't walk away because of discomfort." Discomfort. He spoke for almost an hour about submission, about patience, about prayer, about how women must be careful not to provoke men. Gideon was admonished too, gently. "Try to be more understanding," the pastor told him. "Show love." Mabel was told to return home. She did. The first week surprised her. Gideon adjusted. He spoke more, touched her, even smiled at home. They made love. For the first time in a long while, Mabel felt hope creep back in. Maybe this counseling worked. Maybe this was the turning point. She managed the small changes carefully, afraid to push. Then, about 2 months later, she fell ill. Persistent nausea, dizziness, weakness. She went to the hospital alone. When the doctor returned with her result, he smiled. "Congratulations," he said. "You are pregnant." Her heart burst. She laughed, she cried, she thanked God. This was it, a new beginning. She rushed home with the news. When she told Gideon, he looked at her. "Oh," he said, "that's it?" No smile, no hug, no excitement. That was the first crack. As the pregnancy progressed, Gideon slowly returned to himself, the old self. If she complained of pain, he quoted scripture. "Women have been giving birth since the Bible days. Don't magnify discomfort. Faith doesn't complain." If she craved something and asked him to help, he frowned. Self-control is a fruit of the spirit. If she felt weak, he prayed at her, not with her. "You're spiritually weak," he told her one night. "A strong woman doesn't get attacked like this." Her sleep became troubled. She began having terrible nightmares, vivid, unsettling ones that left her shaking awake. She told Gideon, frightened. "Dreams are spiritual," she said. "I'm scared." He dismissed her immediately. "You need to build yourself spiritually. You can't be strong and be attacked like this." She stopped sharing. She endured. Because how does a pregnant woman leave her marriage? People would talk. They would judge. They would blame her. So she stayed. One night, deep into the pregnancy, she woke up with a sharp, unbearable pain. It wasn't normal. She knew it. "Gideon," she whispered urgently. "Something is wrong." He groaned. "Relax," he said. "You women panic too much." The pain intensified. She cried out. "Please," she begged. "We need to go to the hospital." "You're a woman of little faith," he snapped. "Fear is the real problem." The pain exploded. She screamed, not politely, not quietly. She screamed with everything in her. That was when Gideon jumped up, startled. Only then did he rush her to the hospital. Doctors moved quickly. Voices overlapped. Machines beeped. After a long, terrifying wait, the pastor came out. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "You lost the baby. We are doing everything we can to save her." Gideon barely heard him. Everything went dark. Mabel nearly died that night. Blood loss, complications, emergency evacuation. It took hours. By morning, she was alive, barely. Doctors later said it was grace, nothing more. When she finally returned home days later, weak and grieving, she hoped, foolishly, that something would change, that he would care for her. He didn't. She cooked while still in pain, cleaned while dizzy, cried alone. Her body wasn't healing. Her spirit wasn't healing. One evening, overwhelmed, she called her sister, Mary. Mary arrived the next morning. One look at Mabel, and Mary knew. She packed her bag without argument. "You're not going back there," Mary said quietly. "You almost died." Mary took care of her, fed her, watched her sleep, held her when she cried. When Mabel finally regained strength, Mary said the words no one had ever said to her. "Marriage is not supposed to kill you." And for the first time, Mabel believed it. The call from the pastor came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. "Mabel," he said gently, "we haven't seen you in church. Is everything all right?" She hesitated. Then she spoke, not angrily, just truth, plain and heavy. She told him about the pregnancy, the neglect, the night she screamed in pain, while Gideon quoted scripture, the hospital, the blood loss, the baby she never got to hold, how she almost died. She paused, then added softly, "Sir, he didn't care." The silence on the other end was long. "I would like you to come to my office," the pastor finally said. Mabel swallowed. "I am sorry, sir," she replied respectfully. "I can't, I am far away." It wasn't a lie, but it was also a boundary. The pastor ended the call troubled. For the first time, he didn't feel like a shepherd correcting a wandering sheep. He felt like something was wrong. That Sunday, after service, he asked Gideon to wait behind. This time, he didn't open the Bible. He didn't quote scripture. He sat across from him like a man sitting with another man. "Gideon," he said quietly, "help me understand you." Gideon shrugged. "There's nothing to understand." The pastor leaned back. "You are a peaceful man in public, but your wife almost died. Help me connect the dots." Something in Gideon shifted. At first, he defended himself. "She's emotional. She exaggerates. I'm not violent." The pastor didn't interrupt. He asked questions instead. Slow ones, gentle ones, uncomfortable ones. "When did you stop desiring her? When did you start feeling irritated?" The room went quiet. Gideon's shoulders slumped. Then it broke, not dramatically, not loudly. He covered his face with his hands and wept. "I don't understand myself," he said brokenly. "After we married, something changed." He lifted his head, shame flooding his face. "When we started having sex, I stopped feeling attracted to her." The words hung heavy. "I tried," he continued. "The first month, I forced myself. But the more I saw her, the more irritated I became. I started regretting everything. I hated myself for feeling that way." The pastor listened carefully. "So, instead of facing it," Gideon went on, "I withdrew. I punished her with silence. I hid behind scriptures. I smiled in church because, at least there, I still felt in control." He wiped his face. "I didn't know how to say I made a mistake. That was the truth. Not demons, not witchcraft, not prayerlessness. Emotional dishonesty." The pastor spoke slowly. "Gideon, this happens more than you think." He explained what many churches never talk about. Some people marry image, not intimacy. Some confuse admiration with desire. Some love being loved more than they love the person. Some people are afraid to admit regret, so they turn cold instead. "What you did," the pastor said firmly, "was cruel. Not because you lost attraction, but because you chose silence and spiritual manipulation instead of honesty." Gideon nodded, sobbing. Days later, he reached out to Mabel, not with scriptures, not with tears, with honesty. "I hurt you," he said, "and I don't expect you to come back." She listened quietly. When he finished, she replied calmly, "Crying doesn't heal trauma. Change does." She refused to return. She told him she needed to see real work, counseling, therapy, accountability, not emotional displays. Months passed. Gideon entered counseling alone, not church counseling, professional counseling. He confronted his fear of commitment, his need for validation, his inability to be honest when things stopped feeling perfect. Mabel stayed with her sister. She healed slowly. When Gideon finally asked if she would consider reconciliation, she didn't answer immediately. She waited, watched, observed. Not his tears, his consistency. The story doesn't end with a romantic reunion, it ends with truth. Some marriages can be rebuilt only after brutal honesty. Some cannot, and that doesn't make anyone evil. Mabel learned something powerful. Love that must silence you to survive is not love. And Gideon learned something equally painful. Being admired in church does not mean you are fit for marriage. I hope you enjoyed this story. I would like to read your opinion in the comment section. I'll see you in the next. Goodbye.